Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Joseph Clough, and this is episode 655. Now, in this episode, we're talking about burnout, we're talking about stress, we're talking about how we can handle it or understand exactly why it happens. Because when you discover it, when you understand the psychology and the mentality around overcoming burnout, it could liberate you, and more importantly, it could save you. It may save our life because we know that stress breaks the chain of good health. We know that, right? It's the external the external associations which creates the stress because we're interpreting it, whether it be right, whether it be inappropriate, as in good to be stressed because it's very, very reasonable, or that we're actually doing it on the inside in a way that actually is inappropriate and unwarranted because it's not yielding the results that we truly desire. So that's what we're talking about. Let's just go ahead and break down what we think it really is about. So let's put it this way. If we really think about it, we can get to the point where we're so burnt out, our body just shuts down. It's like, I'm done. This is so stressful that I can't do this anymore. But what usually happens is you consciously will stay in the situation for too long for your unconscious mind, your biology, to give you those signals. Now, I've been through burnout myself. Sometimes when I've been so specific and intentional and a workaholic, like 30, 40 days straight, 10 hours a day, no day off for those 5, 6, 7 weeks. And after a while, your body goes, Joseph, what are you doing? You can't function this way. So one of the biggest things that I really began to do is to listen. Now, by listen, I mean to listen to your body. We're in such an age that we're so consumed with all the next things we've got to do. We're more consumed than ever before. And it causes us to actually be disconnected from our unconscious mind. Disconnected with our beingness because we are just doing all these things. You see, as you know, we're human beings and not human doings. Now, of course, we've got to do certain things, but when it gets to the point that we understand and can understand what we're listening, what we're physically is happening within our body, when we start to do that, you will start to change your life. But let's go a little bit deeper to this. Why does your body react to that stressful situation in the way that it does? As I said, it could be totally warranted. Totally warranted as to how your body does it. Let's say, for example, you are in a work situation and your employer is saying you've got to do 15, 20 hours in one day for the rest of the week. Now, of course, you're probably going to go, I'm not going to do that because it's not healthy. But let's say you did do it, then it's our fault, right? Because we can understand logically that that amount of stress is not good for the body. It's just not good for our experience in well-being. So that's one level. But then you got the other level, and this is really where the pain and the problems begin to grow. Now I'm gonna preface this, depending where we are in the world. I remember someone who I really think is amazing, who's passed away, and I'm gonna probably get his name wrong, but it's I think it's Leo Buscaglia, and he talks about love a lot, and I really love that he talks about love. And he did these big kind of conferences to schools, to like children, to people around the world, and it was amazing. And he said something like, when you know but you don't like apply, you don't take action, then you don't really know. Because we can know all this stuff logically, but if you're not willing to put the work in, if you're not willing to make the decisions and implement it, then we're not going to really change. And so I actually wrote down this quote on my hike today. So let's go ahead and get it exactly right, because I hate misquoting things. So this is the quote. To know and not to do is to not to know. And that's amazing, right? Because we can articulate all this information and go, look, I understand this, Joseph. What do you want about? Of course, the body is reactive to stress. That makes total sense. But if we're not doing something about it, you don't really know. So allow this to be our wake-up call. Allow this to be something that we can shine a light to and make the real change that we desire and that we deserve, because you do deserve this. So knowing that is like an agenda for this podcast episode. To know but not to do is to not to know, because we're talking about something very, very serious. It is this serious that it's going to affect our health if we are in this burnout. The body will shut down. We can get so stressed. And here's the other thing. If it happens with consistency, in other words, if you are immersed with that stress for a long period of time, and you don't, like, you know that it's happening, but you don't do anything, and therefore we don't know, because we don't really, really know, then your body will start to create those neuro associations. Those neurotransmitters will start to connect deeper and deeper. And the analogy that I was thinking when I was on my hike today is that imagine you're at top of the peak of a mountain, and then you were to somehow slip. Because I was going up this little peak, right? And it's all gravelly and stony and things like that. And I was like, let's take it to the extreme. If I was really high and it was more vertical, then if I were to slip all the way down, not only would I get hurt along the way, like going through all the rubble and the debris and things like that, I would also be at the bottom. Now, if I just keep on doing that, climbing up and falling down, my body is going to get used to this pain. It's going to actually start the expectation that every time I get to this place, I'm going to fall down. To the point where sometimes you fall down so many times on this uphill hike that in the end the body goes, what's the point? Let's just not do this anymore. But in your heart, you want to get to the peak again. So it makes it very, very hard for us. It makes it very hard for the body to be able to get out of that hole, to get out of the valley to the peak of the mountain, because it's become a habit. It's become this neuro association. So what I mean by this, if you are in that prolonged amount of stress and you know it because you do, because you feel it, but you don't do anything, then your unconscious mind is going to feel that pain in two different ways. It will either, one, remain, so it will just be a plateau of this pain that we feel, that it becomes normal to us, which is horrible, right? Because I remember what it was like to just always feel like it was normal to blush. Like, that's who I am. That's my identity. I'm a blusher. I can't get up on front of the street. I can't do live stream. I can't speak to people. I can't do well at school. I can't do all of these things. That was my mantra. That was my story. That was my identity in this world. So we feel these feelings of the burnout and the stress, the fear, the anxiety, because we definitely get that because we're in this stressed out state. So if you haven't slept, you are more likely to be anxious. Sleep is so, so important to us. And if we're not sleeping because we're stressed and because we're overthinking, once again, we're falling down that mountain. So that becomes the habit, becomes the norm. And you start to then, even worse, identify with, well, that's just me. I can't handle stressful situations. I'm not that kind of person. Well, that's not true. It's just what you've learned. That's all. It's a strategy you picked up over and over again. If we think about how the mind begins to learn, it is practiced over and over again until it becomes unconscious. Then, if it gets worse, that's when our body just goes, I'm done. Not necessarily real, I'm done, but to the point where we're not able to go to work. We're not able to actually go into work. We're not able to run our business. We're not able to show up for the people in our life. So yeah, we can make it normalized, that we think that it's normal to feel burnt out, crashed and stressed and not good enough or capable to do the things we want to do. But then it gets even worse and we're like, look, I'm done. I just can't do this anymore. Once again, to know this and not to do this, as in apply what we're about to say, is to not to know. But to know and to apply it is to really know, right? So let's break it down a little bit deeper, because why does our body do this? Why does your unconscious mind give you this stress? Why does it react to this stress and create this burnout? Well, let's break it down. Maybe there's something that you've been through in the past, a stressful event, and it caused your brain to have that neuroassociation that every time this happens, it triggers this response. It's like Pavlov dogs, right? When you're teaching the dog to like ring the bell, feed the dog, ring the bell, feed the dog, they're gonna start to savillate. I can never say that word. Savillate, blah, blah, blah. You know the word I'm on about. And then what begins to happen is the dog is trained up to get that physical and biological response. Well, our neurology is not too much different in terms of learning this. So maybe you've gone through a certain situation and it could be totally related, but it could be totally unrelated. What showed up in your relationship could eventually show up in your career. What showed up in your finances could show up in your health. Like, your unconscious mind is great at making connections and associations. So that's why our pain and our stresses actually get worse, because they expand into these different areas. But let's say we've gone through one event, and our unconscious mind came to the conclusion that it did not like this. It did not like this experience. And therefore, it was like, do you know what, conscious mind? Here's what we're gonna do. We're never gonna get you in that situation again. Every time that situation pops up, we're gonna give you the stress, the signals for you to pay attention to. Now, whether that goes into things like chronic fatigue, where it goes into migraines, like I've worked with so many clients in the business world and the entrepreneurial world and in like the high profile career people, where the stress is so much that their body is giving them the migraine to just get out of that situation, giving the chronic fatigue to get out of the situation. But when we don't listen, it shouts. Your unconscious mind is shouting out with pain, is shouting out with these physical symptoms, these psychological symptoms. So to not listen, let's tie this loop up. To not listen, then we're not really doing. And therefore, nothing's gonna work. Because technically you are listening, but you're not really doing anything, and therefore you're not really listening. Goes back to the same quote, but we're now applying it to listening to our neurology. And also even deeper, listening to your best friend, your unconscious mind. You see, your unconscious mind is your best friend. It is doing all these behaviors for you, even if it can be doing the things that we dislike, even if it's doing the things that give us the stress, like the phobic reactions, the chronic fatigue, the migraines, all of these things, right? Not very nice to experience. So we begin to associate our body that it is broken. We associate the body that, look, you're not doing a good job. You start to get more disconnected by the angst that you feel, the anger that you feel, that your life is not the way that you like it because you're experiencing this stress and your unconscious mind is not handling it. Now imagine if you had that energy, that energetic negativity and hate and dislike to your best friend. Well, they're not going to be your best friend for long. In the end, there's a really big disconnect. So you have to listen to your neurology. You have to listen to your best friend, the unconscious mind. For when you do, you can then start to apply certain actions. Now, how? You're asking and thinking inside, well, if I am going to listen, Joseph, and I'm paying attention to what my unconscious mind is saying, because at the end of the day, look, other people can be in that stressful situation if it's a warranted situation. So therefore, we should be able to do it, but somewhere along the line, something went wrong. Something broke within us. And by broke, it can be fixed, it can be evolved, it can be integrated, all those things. But somewhere along the line, something happened from good health to unhealth or bad health. This dissonance, this conflict, this contrasting experience. And then we lost our way and we didn't listen. We didn't do anything. Even if we did listen, and therefore we didn't listen in reality. So we have to reconnect with our body. We've got to understand that your unconscious mind is experiencing these signals, these symptoms of so-called stress and burnout, and it's shouting louder and louder for the intention to let you know that something has to change. Now, I'm a very big believer that it does not mean you got to quit that situation. Like, it doesn't mean like you listen to your body and go, well, I'm just not going to go to work anymore, because that doesn't help. Many people I work with, before they actually get to me, they change their situation so often that in the end they fall in the same situation. It's a different environment, but it's the same reaction. And I'm like, no, we got to stop that. We've got to get to the place of listening to our body and then changing and transforming and evolving it so you go into that situation and it's your domain. It is your essence and your energy to experience the freedom of thought and in the body and the mind to show up with self-certainty and power. So we have to not just leave the environment because it's probably unwarranted, and you will know the difference. If other people are doing it fine and we're not, we know that it's probably an unwarranted amount of burnout and stress that we become disconnected. If it is doing the 20 hours every single day for the next week or two, then of course that's a warranted amount of stress to listen to get out of the situation. But you can decipher between those two situations. So, if we are listening to our body now and we're understanding the unconscious mind is trying to protect us, we have to educate the unconscious mind, not to hate it, not to be indifferent or disconnected from it. We've got to get the unconscious mind on our side. We need to teach it the way. Now, there are a couple of ways that this can happen. You see, if we've fallen down that mountain so often, we're cut and we're bruised and like our mind is like, just stop it, just quit it, then we've got to practice. We've got to get better in terms of how we show up. We've either got to hallucinate it, rehearse it, or just habitually practice something over and over again, because that's conscious competence that it then feeds over into your unconscious mind. So in other words, when you first learned to drive, you had no idea how to drive, but then you had to become consciously competent at it. You had to learn the strategy, from the gas pedal to the brakes, to the gears, to the clutch, to the mirrors, to the speedometer, to the people on the outside of the car. All of those things, you were just consciously applying it and understanding it. You were terrible probably at first. I know I was. But after a period of time, especially having, say, passed your test, you then just drive now anywhere and you're like, it's easy. It is easy. I just get up and go. I don't even think about it. Sometimes I get to my destination, I have no idea how I got there. I know I was in the car, but I don't really remember everything. Well, that's what I mean by applying what you're learning. becoming conscious, becoming mindful, starting to educate yourself. It could be via books, it could be via podcasts, it could be via live streams, it could be through trainings, all of these things, right? Whatever it is, you need to like get yourself in that mindset that if it's so important to my body, my being to be healthy, if I want to be here for the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 80 years, however old we are, however old we want to live, we've got to educate ourselves consciously. What is our willingness to adapt? What is our willingness to learn? What is our willingness to think differently, to be resourceful? Where are we on that learning scale? Remember, if we're listening, but we're not applying, we're not doing anything, then we're not learning, we're not really listening. So you've got to get into the habitual mindset of practice, practice, practice. Just like you did when you were driving, just like you did when you were walking, just like when you did when you were learning to talk. These are time and over again. How to change, how to get dressed, how to brush your teeth. All of these things are strategies that you've learned, that you've eventually handed down to your unconscious mind. So that's what we got to do. Now, the other level to this, because you can do all that, and let's just think of a type of goal, let's say it's let go of a stress, or we can change it a little bit, right? So maybe you're stressed out when it comes to sports or something like that. Well, you find someone who had the issue and let it go. Right? That's what you do. You model people. You get to surround yourself with them. You start to understand the strategy because they have been where you've been. They fell down that mountain X amount of times, but they found out a secret. They found out the strategy, the way to get up there, and to then you can model, then you can articulate it, then you get like the shortcut. Either option is good and great. Like, obviously one is a little bit quicker, but even still, to let go of that stress, to become conscious of our thoughts, be conscious of our unconscious mind and what it's feeding us, what it is shouting at us, all that stuff, you could change and transform your whole paradigm for life, the whole meaning of your life. Because once you start to practice it, it becomes unconscious. That continued habit, that education, that doingness will create the unconscious competence, what I would also call mastery, on your behalf. Therefore, you'll be able to decipher the difference between what is warranted and unwarranted unconsciously. You'll be able to decipher all of this information, so when it happens in the future, you've learned from it, you've grown from it, and therefore when you go into that situation, it is easy. Now you might be thinking like, Joseph, it's not easy, it's so hard, but it can become easy. Just like learning to walk, it is hard in the beginning, but you got through it. You listened, you observed people walking around you, and then you started to replicate it. And when we began to replicate it, it became a habit, a way of being in this world. So remember, we have to listen to what is happening within ourselves. What are the intentions behind it? What are the signals? And the reason we're doing this subject today is because I briefly talked about it on the previous episode. So feel free to dive into that one, episode 654. But I want to go deeper into it today so we listen and understand why our body is doing this, if it is deciphered between warranted and unwarranted, and then to educate it over time. And it could be as quick, if you're walking with someone, it could be a matter of just a small amount of weeks, or if we're just doing it alone via podcasts or hypnosis sessions, like just listening to them, because they're not always designed for your needs. I mean, they're great, I wouldn't put them out there otherwise, but when you start to apply this with maybe someone else who's overcame all this stuff that you're going through, that is where you just do it quicker. But if not, listen away, apply, do things different. Start to get your unconscious mind in alignment with your desires. Because whatever you desire, I believe desires you to. Whatever you want, wants you to. But at the moment, unconsciously, it's wanting the stress in a weird way because it's trying to get you out of situations. It's trying to protect you. But it's now time to rise up and to shine your light in this world. For when you do, you become the example of what can be done to your clients, to your customers, to your employees, to your employer, your co-workers, your family, your children, if you have any, your siblings, your parents, your pets. You start to show up in a way with power, of an essence of greatness. But it all starts to listen, to apply, and therefore you truly, truly will transform your life. And of course, if you ever need help and you are a professional, this is what I do. If you're an entrepreneur, a thought leader, a highly driven professional in your career, and you experience this stress that is stopping you live your dreams, so you feel like an imposter, you feel like you're not enough, you don't feel capable right now, because it all feeds into the same bank, book a call at josephclough.info/talk. We'll get clear on what you're going through. We'll get clear on your experiences as to where you want to be, what's getting in the way, and then if you're a good fit, we may invite you into the program. Of course, there's an investment there because it's fully customized to your needs, customized to your unconscious. So that is josephclough.info/talk. I got a runny nose. It's josephclough.info/talk. So, with that, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Really just pay attention. Really listen to your neurology. Listen to your best friend. Because when you do, life will never be the same again. It really won't. This is your time to shine if you choose to listen, to do, to then really listen and transform your life. So with that, my friends, I look forward to speaking to you on a future podcast episode. Many thanks and goodbye.